another regulation system. So now I ask you, will you finance there? Only big oligopoly company can do that, can operate. That's why you have no national operator. How many times I go to forum and I very simply, where is a businessman African? Give me 2 names. Not 1, 2, or 3, or 5. Nobody can tell us where are the businessmen from Africa. Now, how to create businessmen for Africa? How to make sure that the young farmer in South Africa, our grower, can have access to markets. How to make sure that people in Pakistan or in India can have access to market. How to finance them. The commodity supply chain rests on 5 building blocks. Understanding the financing requirement of each block on an individual basis creates the basis for a consolidated approach, starting from the end user, integrating a discount financial model. In our logic, we go from production to selling. In reality, we should go from selling to production, to selling to buying. But we have been educating on the different way. Mr. Zan will cover the parts inside this value chain, financing block. Question. In the absence of regulated, transparent, and illiquid exchange or trading platform, the domestic market is often controlled by a private oligopoly dominated by multinational trade. I have nothing against that. They do their job, but we don't do our job. People are complaining why we, Africa, don't process what we produce locally. I think I heard somebody talking this morning about why on cocoa we don't transform our cocoa, we don't do this, we don't do that. But first of all, we have to master our raw material. We don't do it. We don't know what we produce. We don't know what we export. We don't know how to make a proper budget. How do you want to make a proper budget if you don't know even your crop projection as a country? Yeah, big problem. So please, we have to make order in our own house before to complain about the house of the neighborhood. The next question, how can the small and local participant competitively enter the supply chain finance arena on a structured basis? I have covered part of my subject. I think at 5 o'clock we have a training session on a master class on how to do structured finance, how to do different kind of things. I think you will be attending with us and cover some topic on logistics. I will leave the floor now to Mr. Zanmeyer before the minister show. How many minutes I left? 1. Okay, thank you. How are you? Thank you very much. Zach.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Minister. It's an honor. Thank you. We can take off this slide in about 5 minutes' time, but I want us to have a careful look at it because it's nothing new. The top half of that slide could just as well have been a typical trade transaction between a spice island in the Southeast Asian Sea and Zanzibar on the African East Coast. That's the top part of the slide. And this has been done for centuries and millennia, but what I want us to look at is the bottom part, basically from the product suite and then the services that we use. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is, I think, the crux of the next 7 minutes, Mr. Minister. Would it not be an enlightening experience to actually discover that one of the modern catalysts of making trade flows work, and this is the financial institutions, let's not forget that, are actually progressively looking differently at exactly the bottom part of that slide. It's a sad reality that the international traders in soft commodities, energy, metals, and all related commodities across the world have not managed to escape the financial crisis. Their balance sheets have been devalued. The equity that they so reluctantly used to give to commercial banks to finance their trade activities has now been diminished, and it's not the way it was before. The major shift in the availability of conventional security to banks that got used to the mere analysis of a balance sheet. Because let's be frank, that's what our credit committees used to do. Look at a balance sheet, look at the equity on the balance sheet and said, you're good for X million dollars, and that will be the trade line that I'm willing to extend to you. Now, that has changed. And what has now become the norm is the fact that banks realize they need to assess the cultivation risk, the processing risk, the transport and logistics risk, the price risk, and all other risks associated with the supply chain, in fact, to make an enlightened and credit-informed decision. For the forward-thinking banks, and there are a couple of us out there, with a mandate and willingness to service our clients in this difficult post-crisis environment, and Standard Chartered being Africa, Asia, Middle East, and China focused, we are especially part of this scene. Our emerging market focus actually mandates us to look at farmers and agriculture and also the rest of commodity trade as an integral part of our business. This has demanded the adoption and then the careful refinement of the principal approach that the commodities that are the subject of their trade finance activities, this is what we're talking about here, has an intrinsic value, and that intrinsic value has to be recognized as collateral for the loan. And this is crucial. Right. What further needs to be done, ladies and gentlemen, this is the second change after the post-crisis devaluation of balance sheets that we so normally looked at in terms of equity, is the fact that there's been a quite dramatic change in the ability of banks to now look at the smaller trader, the smaller merchant, the guy without the strong balance sheet, the guy with a good contact base amongst commercial farmers on a farm gate basis. He might have a small processing facility up country, and he might have some trade and other related acquaintances and contacts to sell his produce to. What has happened now is that banks, looking at the way trade finance is financed differently, are now able to finance this guy, and he can actually now go head on with the international trader because he's got adequate finance at the right junctures in the trade finance flow. Traders often enjoy a monopoly in terms of market share in the upcountry farm gate trade. These are the smaller traders. But they nevertheless always historically suffered from a dire lack of access to the funds that they required to massively multiply their trade activities in the existing and most often dreamingly neighboring countries. And don't get me wrong, this is not as easy as it looks. The process of migration to a financing institution that looks at trade flows in this manner and actually then takes the bold step of financing the trade flows is fraught with perils for the unwary. And we've seen this time and time again, and you need to be very, very careful. It demands a thorough understanding of not only the trade cycles, but also the specific commodity and the characteristics associated with it. And a simple and very downgraded example would be the storage cycle of a degradable commodity. You need to know what you need to do to look after a commodity if that is the collateral for your loan. Remember, there's no recourse back to the balance sheet of the trader because he doesn't have one. And this is the critical essence of what I'm trying to convey. Suddenly, our relationship managers and our credit analysts have now become an integral part of our clients' business because they are now required to deeply understand the risks associated with storage, as I said, logistics, the trade environment, the different business partners in country, regionally, internationally that our clients deal with, and the factors influencing price risk in the business cycle. Simple example would be if a country trades on import or export parity with a particular commodity. There are huge price implications on either of those levels. It also made banks realize that it cannot arrogantly insist on operating autonomously in an international and integrated trade environment. I think this is crucial for us because the forming of crucial strategic partnerships has led to banks now being able to operate more efficiently by passing on some of the risks that we previously reluctantly accepted, or heaven forbid, we actually declined a perfectly good trade transaction because of the fact that there was no balance sheet backing it up. I want to point out some of these partnerships below, and I think one of them has been mentioned to my left here. Most critical and integral in structures adopting the methodology of taking the intrinsic value of the commodity as collateral for the loan is a partnership with a collateral controller and credit support company, such as ACE sitting on my left. These collateral controllers are actually responsible for more than just quantity and quality in a warehouse. They offer far more. They're contracted to effectively ensure and safeguard the integrity of the bank's collateral. That's the stock in the warehouse, but not only in storage, but also during and along all stages of the supply chain. It includes processing, it includes logistics, transporting, and then also to the end buyer in terms of the end destination.